Let me. Ba, 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 ba.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back here to Netroots Nation. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. One of the things I love about coming to these conferences, you never know who you're going to run into in the hall, and that's why I'm thrilled to sit down with Hamilton Nolan. He's a labor reporter over at In These Times. Does some fantastic reporting, and always somebody I love having on the program. Hamilton, thanks for sitting down with us.
Thanks, man. Good to see you in your home state, even.
It was good to see you. I was actually kind of surprised to see you here.
I'm here moderating a panel with some progressive organizers tomorrow, so I'm here courtesy of the News Guild.
Nice.
Shout out to the News Guild. Yeah.
Shout out to the News Guild. Now, front and center, a lot of the Starbucks workers marching around, a lot of the Amazon labor union people. Labor seems to be the new black.
Well, we'll see. You know, I hope so, man. I mean, it definitely is in the streets, and whether, you know, I guess I'm writing a book this year, which is kind of on this very question, which is sort of like labor is very hot at the grassroots level right now, but can we actually translate that into a powerful, functional, stable, long-term labor movement, which I think is still a bit of an open question.
Yeah, because a lot of people have been looking at the Amazon labor union's victory at JFK 8 and going, you know, we could replicate this everywhere. And I'm like, well, I hope we can, because you're then talking about societal change. You're talking about more people being involved in grassroots kind of organizing, kind of being, instead of this concept of the union as a kind of a business entity, you're internalizing union as part of your existence. That, to me, is the positive way to go.
Yeah, and ALU is such a great example of what's happening because, you know, as you know, they were an independent union. The independents were the first ones to actually win an election at Amazon. And now we have all this, or they have all this incoming interest. You know, they'll say we have incoming questions from Amazon warehouses all over the country. But what they don't have is, like, the resources to organize all those Amazon warehouses. You know, they just filed for an election in Albany, which is great. And, you know, we all hope that goes well. But it's such a good example of, like, a place and an institution and a group of workers that's harnessing all that grassroots energy. And the institutions in the labor movement and the big unions and the ones that do have the resources and the money need to pitch in and help ALU, you know, be able to build the bandwidth to actually respond to all that interest from workers, because that interest doesn't last forever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But can you do what they did, what Chris Smalls and the crew did there at JFK 8 all across the country? Can you replicate that?
I mean, look, I believe you can. I'm an optimist for the labor movement. I mean, I always believe that people will organize. If people understand what unions are about and what they do, they will naturally be in favor of unions, because unions are good for workers. So, right. I mean, it's all a matter of cutting through the bullshit and the lies. And but, you know, the energy is there today. So it's like the positive sort of feeling of a lot of regular people towards unions is in the air right now, and we have to strike while the iron is hot and take advantage of that. And so, again, it's like this sort of atmosphere that we're in right now, that when everybody's talking about Starbucks and Amazon everywhere you go, it doesn't last forever. You know, it feels, when you're in it, you're like, hey, this is the new normal, but obviously it's not. You know, you've been around a long time, and you know these things, like, go up and down. So the places that have the resources to build institutions got to build on these independent efforts that are happening, like ALU. And, you know, some unions are. I mean, I know the teachers gave them a bunch of money to get an office and stuff like that. So all that stuff is great, but, like, we got to all kind of lay our egos aside and our territorialism aside, and everybody wanting to be the ones, you know, to grab all these workers and say, look, man, we all got to go where the energy is and help out. You know?
No, you're right. And because Amazon right now is the target, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, look, they won an election in Staten Island, but when you think about what it's going to take to get a contract, that's going to be a bit, Amazon is going to drag that to the Supreme Court and back as many times as they can. So, that's another place. Like, we need all that firepower of labor politically, in D.C. I mean, this is ultimately going to be a political question, like to force these companies to the table. Same thing as Starbucks and Chipotle, and you see a lot of places closing stores now. Starbucks closing stores left and right, firing organizers. Chipotle closed the first store that they had that unionized in Maine. These are kind of like companies not feeling that they're going to have any penalties. I mean, all these companies are not stupid. They're making the political calculation that they're not going to be held responsible politically, they're not going to be held responsible by regulators, and they're not going to be held responsible by consumers or workers. So we have to prove them wrong.
No, and that's what I've been saying for a while. It's great to win an election every now and then. You got to get the contract.
Yeah.
And until there's an entity that's going to either force that to happen or public pressure to force that to happen, I don't ever see Amazon coming around unless there's the pressure, and that comes from us, and that comes from workers across the spectrum organizing or understanding the importance.
Yeah, and look, I mean, and you look at a place like Starbucks, Starbucks, those workers are doing everything that you would say that they should do, which is when Starbucks is not coming to the table, they're striking. They're striking at Starbucks stores all over the country, and they have been for months and months, and that's like what you would say the workers should be doing, but it takes more, it does take ultimately our alleged friends in politics have to come and lean on these companies, lean on Howard Schultz, and especially on Amazon, which is the real, behemoth. You're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar company. I mean, and of course, we can't expect that regulators in D.C. are going to be as labor-friendly as they are now. So if they're not getting it done now, it's only going to get worse.
No, you're absolutely right. And this is where the argument that the NLRB is too friendly to workers, so we need to slow the process down, seems to be an interesting argument made by these companies.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw. This was related to antitrust, but Amazon filed a lawsuit saying that they were being harassed by the FTC. Bezos was being harassed by the FTC. So I mean, these corporations genuinely don't believe that they should be regulated because they haven't been regulated essentially since the Reagan era. And so, again, like from the perspective of the labor movement, we really, really, really got to strike while the iron is hot. And like, we got a friend at the NLRB. We got a friend in the White House, at least to by the standards of U.S. presidents. And we got to get something out of that. We got to get some tangible progress out of that. We got to get contracts sealed. We got to get union campaigns won while we have the good conditions, because when it gets worse, it only gets harder.
Yeah, ultimately, at the end of this, for all this energy and all this activity, you got to make people's lives better.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the promise of the labor movement. I mean, that's what we tell people when we organize. You are going to take a risk, and you're going to risk your job possibly and your livelihood, but you're doing it, ultimately to make your life better and your coworkers' life better. So it's very true. If you win a big election in an Amazon warehouse and you got thousands of people to go out on a limb and vote for that, and then you can't pull a contract in a year, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, how many years are going to go by before they're able to get a contract at an Amazon warehouse? So, we got to throw everything into that, because it really does, it goes stale. It goes stale, and people start getting cynical, and there starts to be a backlash, and all that stuff is kind of poisons the well for organizing.
Yeah, if only we could have that backlash against Amazon.
I know. Well, it's
they treat their workers terribly.
Yeah.
I mean, the injury rates are higher than the industry standards. They talk about, we pay, this high wage, but the reality is in the warehouse industry, they're on the lower end.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the reality is they're the bad actor.
Yeah, and man, I've been saying for months, man, Democrats should be running against a guy like Jeff Bezos and against a guy like Howard Schultz. I mean, they should be putting their picture on billboards. They should be having them in TV ads being like, these are the villains, you know?
Yeah, but how do you do that when Howard Schultz was almost was going to possibly be Hillary Clinton's labor secretary?
Yeah, well, look, it's a new
Think
day.
about that
I mean,
world.
I know, and you know, not for nothing, but I would love the next reporter that interviews Hillary. I would really love them to ask her about that because I don't know that she's ever responded to that directly, even though that comes up every time Howard Schultz does something terrible. So, you know, whoever's out there that has access to Hillary, please ask her about
But
that.
isn't this the problem with Democrats as a whole? I mean, you know, they're trying to be the party of working people, but while dabbling their toes into, we still need to pander to corporate America.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, if you think back to the Clinton era in the 90s,
Do I have to?
the Democratic Party as an institution was much more neoliberal at that time than it is today. So,
Sure.
I mean, institutionally, there has been some progress. Democrats are always going to disappoint us and always going to piss us off. And it's, you know, it's like moving an aircraft carrier. So you're always going to be trying to pull that party to the left. But I mean, even when you think of pure political opportunities, you know, think of Bezos. Who likes Bezos? Even Republicans hate Bezos. You know, Republicans hate Bezos. Like, take advantage of this. Like, everybody hates this guy. This guy is a villain. He's a legitimate villain. He deserves to be a villain. And instead of worrying about why working people are running off and voting for Trump and saying we're going to lose this right-wing populism, let's have a genuine form of populism. Let's have a genuine worker-centric form of populism and say, like, these are the villains and we're going to be the party that stands against that.
There you go. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Hamilton Nolan. He's a labor reporter over in these times. Also an author. You got a book coming out soon, maybe? We expecting that?
Probably early 2024 because the publishing industry is very slow, but I'm working on it now, and it's all about sort of everything that we're talking about right now. Organized labor. There's a lot of reporting in it about various aspects of interesting unions, exciting campaigns across America, and reformers within the labor movement, and so please put it on your birthday list.
There you go, because there's a lot going on. I just don't know that it gets reported on enough. I know you do a great job, but there are some other folks who do incredible work, but it's just not.
Yeah, absolutely, and I mean, as you know, like between the two of us, we probably know every labor reporter in America, which is actually a bad thing. You know, like there's just not that many. There's not that much of a labor press, which is too bad when you think about how important it is of an issue structurally, you know. So there really are some great labor reporters out there, but not enough.
A lot of work to do. But Hamilton, I appreciate the work you guys do. Fantastic stuff. I look forward to the book. Good stuff.
Good. Thanks for having me, man. Good to see you.
Anytime. Good to see you as well, our good friend Hamilton Nolan. Going to take a quick break back here from Netroots Nation here in Pittsburgh. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations.